The Straight Red Card is sponsored by Roughneck Scarves. Visit Roughneck Scarves for your supporters' gear from Seattle, Portland, New York, to the Philadelphia Union, and anything MLS to the English Premier League. Visit Roughneck Scarves at roughneckscarves.com.
I've gone on the record and said that I'm not a big fan of the 4-5-1 strictly because we haven't had a good target striker since Brian McBride. I don't think Josie can do it. Not at this point in his career. I don't think Buttle can do it to the level that we need him to do it. We know that Wando can't do it. Not the solo striker, at least. So if we're gonna have like a Holden in the central midfielder, I mean, the diamond midfield would work. Or a 4-3-3 with Dempsey and Donovan pushing up more as strikers more than anything. We haven't actually seen a 4-3-3 with our A team. We've seen it with the partial A team, partial C team. But ultimately for Spain and quite frankly even for the Gold Cup, I ultimately see us going with the 4-2-2-2 that we usually see, or the 4-4-2.
Yep.
And I just see us going with that option and having the ability to push Dempsey up top if we are in desperate need of a goal, like we saw with the Confederations Cup and even to an extent the World Cup.
Yeah, I think that's the crazy thing is when you start digging into these formations, at the end of the day, are we just spinning our wheels? And I think that's been the bigger question for everyone. From the big picture, I mean, when you're playing the likes of Brazil and Argentina and Spain, I mean, just look at the Champions League final. And the amount of simple possession that Anderson, Iniesta, and Xavi, had. It's just incredible. And I think that, from a defensive standpoint, how the most important battle to win are those simple passes, those entry passes to the forwards, centrally.
Mm-hmm.
Can you force the ball wide? Can you limit those simple passes? And, I think that's for those three teams, for Brazil, for an Argentina, and for a Spain, I think everybody in the world is trying to figure that one out, not just Bob Bradley and the U.S. national team.
Mm-hmm.
And the most difficult part I think that we'll see against Spain is how much defending can you possibly do to limit chances, and at the same time, like you said, figure out a way to push Clint or push Landon higher to help out. And I think we're going to see a massive drop, in the talent level the moment we get done with Spain and we get into the Gold Cup. So I think there's kind of two trains of thought. How do we prepare for this match versus how do we prepare for a Gold Cup? Because it's a one-off friendly, and now you're getting into a tournament style where you're having to focus on not just yourself. Not just the health of your players, yellow cards, travel, injuries, knocks, coaches' decisions, referees' decisions, all those things. But now you're having to plan for, different teams with different styles. It's going to be a great question. I just see Michael Bradley sitting in the middle with Jermaine and Maurice, starting there, similar to what we saw with Argentina. But, who knows? I think you're going to see Bob Bradley having to make, unfortunately, some decisions based on, some injuries and some fatigue, and kind of see where it goes from there.
Yeah, unfortunately, as you you can even mention Spector in that group, as well as Maurice Adu, Jones, Bedoya. I mean, we have so many great central midfielders. It's an overflow, and then you unfortunately get back to the back four, and maybe there's not such an overflow there because the questions that people are asking is it time to throw Tim Ream in there as a starter versus Spain, for example, and see what he can do, or people don't talk about this as much, but why isn't Tim Ream a candidate to start at a left back spot? I mean, it's not like Bornstein is really tearing up things at Tigres. Why not give him that shot?
Well, I think right now, if it's an ideal starting situation, you're going to see Bocanegra on the left-hand side of the defense. I think that's just kind of where it's been. I mean, people forget that if you want to talk about left back, like one of the toughest leagues in the world, and this is highly underrated, and I'm not just saying it because he's one of my close friends. When you think about France, League One, I mean, you think about young African players with incredible amounts of pace, that are flying up and down the flank. And Carlos has been dealing with that for 3 years.
Yeah.
I know he has his detractors versus, playing left back to centrally. We've seen Bornstein play a majority of his time in Mexico as a defensive midfielder, more than anything.
Yep.
I don't personally see Tim Ream as a left back. He's got an incredible left foot. Incredible.
He does, yeah.
He sees things that not a lot of defenders see. But a few times, if you see him with the Red Bulls, if Roy Miller gets pinched up the left flank a little bit, when Tim gets isolated, he's a good starting point defender. He's a good defender that checks with runs. But when he gets isolated on the flank, that's a whole different animal.
Yeah.
And you get exposed a lot easier. The conversations I've heard from people who are asking for turnover in the media have focused on Gooch, have focused on Los, have focused on Jay DeMerit, that next generation. Can we identify younger center backs? And for me, the only thing that really stands out in this group of defenders, Timmy Chandler decided to take this tournament off. He based off fatigue of Bundesliga play.
Right.
It was really his first full season underneath his belt of game in, game out.
Right.
But Omar Gonzalez is pretty quickly fallen off the map in terms of, getting called in. And I thought this would be, just in my humble opinion, if you're going to put a Clarence Goodson next to an Omar Gonzalez, if we're looking at upside, and do we want to bleed a young center back who's done pretty well over the last couple of years in MLS, maybe this is the tournament to do so. That being said, I'm nowhere near Bob Bradley's camp and what his thought process is, and Clarence moving over to Brøndby and getting a look at possible, Europa League action and playing for, seasonally one of the best teams in Denmark, probably makes a difference. But, I think from a fan's perspective, a lot of people are calling for, fresh blood, no more Jonathan Bornstein, no more Jonathan Spector, kind of see where that next realm of players are. And maybe the bigger question is, how have we not identified an Olympic team since 2008, at least a core group of players from the 20s all the way up that are together with an identified coach, with an identified coaching staff that are playing games, and if they are playing at a Major League Soccer level, then at least you could bleed some of these college players and kind of that age gap difference between 23s and 20s, for some guys that are maybe Generation Adidas players, kind of push them through the ranks to kind of identify that next Basumande, type young player. So, I think there's a lot of questions, a lot of talking points.
Yeah, I for one would start Tim Ream over Gonzo any day of the week. Gonzo certainly has the physical attributes to be a solid central back, but Tim Ream reads the game as good as any of our center backs can.
Great passer.
And he has the ability of controlling the ball and making the pass forward, which a lot of our center backs don't have. Personally, I would in upcoming games I would start Tim Ream and Goodson. And I trust Bocanegra on the left more than I trust Bornstein. Bornstein's proven that he can play games at the highest level, but then he's proven that he can be non-existent and actually screw over games at the lowest level. His inconsistency, it kind of scares me to an extent, but like I said, he can be good at points. But I would trust Boca out left over Bornstein at this point. But most likely what we'll see Boca start in the middle, is my guess. Whether it be with Goodson or whether it be with Ream, most likely with Goodson since Boca is a left-footed central back. But who knows? I mean, I would like to see Ream start over just because he is younger, he is talented, and he would be the next generation of center backs that we need to start prepping.
Yeah, well, I hear what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from. The only thing that I think that we need to kind of be careful with, because we do this often as a country and as a media, we exalt these young players to be the next coming, the next generation, the next best player. And not too long ago we were talking about an Eddie Johnson, going to be the man.
Yeah.
And not too long ago we were talking about Freddie Adu. Not too long ago we were talking about Josie Altidore. So I think we got to temper our expectations of these young players and just make sure that we're giving them the right experience. And I know that's what Bob's about. And I know that just from being around Bob and being around, Jesse Marsh and Lubos and Mike Sorber and those guys, it's about developing the camaraderie, developing the atmosphere, developing the competition, because it's a massive difference. It's in no way, shape, or form am I taking away anything from what Tim has shown. I think out of any of the defenders on that roster, he is by far the most comfortable player with the ball. That being said, it's a much different level, like I was talking about earlier, from a CONCACAF type game to playing against Spain. And the last thing we want to do or need to do is, crush a kid's confidence and really hang him out to dry.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I understand where you guys are coming from and where we as a media are coming from. I just kind of fear for some of these young players because, we set the bar with Josie's transfer to Villarreal. And now a lot of us in the media are absolutely hammering the kid.
Yeah.
For not playing at a consistent level and not scoring goals at a consistent level.
Yeah.
Well, given our center back options, Gooch in question with an injury, perhaps. We talked about Boca playing out left back. That really only leaves Goodson and Ream left, which is why I was really hinting at the fact that I really want Ream to start, not only because I want him to see him to get the experience against Spain, against Gold Cup competition, but, he has the attributes to be a good center back. Whether or not he ends up turning into a quality center back and a future center back for us, we'll have to see in the future. But as of right now, it looks like
one player that I like a lot, and a majority of the year was cut short because of injury, is Iko Para.
Yeah.
Iko Para.
That kid is a physical specimen, and I really, really like the small amount that I saw last year just covering his games
until his broken foot.
He's a beast on set pieces. He's a great marker. But unfortunately, as being a former center back myself and knowing what it's like, those little things can only be learned, by playing at the highest level and kind of being exposed. I thought Carlos had a great article on USsoccer.com today, just talking about being around Brian McBride and being around Claudio and being around those older veteran guys and how literally every single training session was almost a life or death. They literally raised the bar, and it was something that he could have never prepared himself for. And I think that's something that exposure is definitely important, and I think it's great for a kid like Tim to absolutely be around a full camp, not just a week and 2 small games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and no one. I mean, certainly I've been around watching the team since the '80s, so there's no one more cautious than I am about bringing these new kids, these young kids in. So I do think, Brian, you're right. We need to take it one step at a time.